playing just to survive and start figuring out how to live with purpose and with intensity and with integrity and with character and with conviction. And if that sounds like a lot, like that is what we're going after. And I think for those of you guys that have been apart for any longer than 30 seconds, you know that this is like what we are all about. But for some reason right now, even in my own heart, I feel like it's hard because so many times we're playing just to get by. We're like, hey, yeah, Jake, what do I need to get done? Or hey, like book, or hey, podcast, or hey, whatever I'm listening to, or whatever I'm experiencing in that moment. What do I need to do to get by? Or just get the next tool to survive the next thing. And I think there's a more holistic approach that we could be focusing on so that we could start taking some major ground, because we have to start playing to win. Like at the end of the day, obviously, the foundation of this entire thing is our faith. And that if we're standing on a foundation of faith that says we already won, then why are we living like we still have to figure all of this shit out? Why are we still living as if at the end of this, we aren't going to win this thing? Now, again, you may not win the day. So let me be very, very clear. If I was to give you a bigger picture of my life right now, it's a total shit show. And that's okay. Like, again, I've been doing this for however many years, and there's no version of this where one day you wake up and you're like, dude, I got it on lock now. Like, it just works out. No, you guys can have the best laid plans and all the tools and all the books and all the podcasts and all the things and all the stuff. And at the end of the day, this is still going to be war. This is still going to, no. And if it did, you wouldn't show up. See, that's the crazy part. The crazy part is okay, let's do this. Here's your question for entering tonight, which wasn't on the paperwork. Here's your question for entering tonight. What do you think if you just had your life would be easier? Everyone go. Don't even explain it. Don't give me the whole explanation. What do you believe? What do you believe if this was just fixed, my life would be easier? What would it be? Because my point is, like, let's talk about this for a second. What is one thing in your life that could be fixed and you believe if this was fixed, my life would be easier? What is it? Anybody that wants to raise their hand or go? All the things that we just discussed, yes, should they get better? Absolutely. Will they get better? Absolutely. Brandon, will you probably have a little bit more? Yes. Sean, will you probably learn how to grieve a little bit better? Absolutely. Stephen, are you going to keep growing in communication with your wife? For sure. Are we going to figure out, Josh, you're going to figure out how to have the conversation about being in the same rhythm with sex and your wife? Yes. Is it ever going to be perfect? No, because we would never, if we got there, let me make this clear. If you got what you wanted, you would be bored as hell. See, the pressure of life, the pressures we're trying to alleviate are the very things that are driving us to growth, to transformation, and if we're honest, at the end of the day, it is driving us to God. In however you guys build a relationship with God, which for each of you I know looks very, very different. I know for each of you that when it comes to your relationship and your walk in church and all these things, awesome, wonderful, great. But here's what I'm saying, is that at the end of the day, the more pressure we have on our lives, the more it pushes us to grow. Because you guys, we all know that at the end of the day, that we only transform because of two reasons. And you guys have heard me say this before. There's only two reasons that humans transform: great love or great pain. That is the only reason. Now, both of those same reasons, which I do not say often, are also the very reasons we will stop growing at all. Again, so that's that. And then the thumbs up is the other one. So now I know. Okay, good. See, I'm learning. Zoom is helping me out here. I know there's a way to get rid of those, and I'm going to find it down here at the bottom with whatever that tool is. Reactions. Here we go. Recognize hand gestures. No. There, they're gone. Okay. Now, point is great love and great pain will drive you into growth, but it will also drive you into conformity. Because that great pain, if not worked into transformation, will turn into great depression. So if you don't let the pain in your life work its way into transformation, it will push you into the ground, into depression. If great love doesn't give you reason to move forward and to pursue greater transformation to create containment for that love, then at the end of the day, that great love will cause you to conform and you'll be codependent in order to sustain that love because you believe it's you that got that love in the first place. Does that make sense? Because the idea of tonight is we're saying that growth at the end of the day, if we're really going to go after the life that we want, if we're really going to go after the life we were created to inhabit, you have to risk, and the risk is everything. Like, Jake, okay, so what should I risk? All of it. How often? All the time. I'm not even trying to be really sarcastic, because if I want my relationship with my wife to grow, I have to go into new territory I've never gone into before. You guys have been married for 23 years. Some of you have been married longer than me. But at the end of the day, you're still discovering your wife, and your wife is still pushing you into places to discover yourself. Every relationship in your life is doing that. My kids are doing that. My family is doing that for me. You guys, we have to wake up to the reality that we are not going to grow purely because we want to grow. Like, none of us are going to listen. If you didn't have something in your life that you wanted to work on, your ass wouldn't be here. You got better things to do on a Monday night, okay? So let's just be honest with the fact that great pressure on our lives pushes us into places of transformation we wouldn't normally choose. That's the invitation. You guys know, if you've been to a fight weekend, if you've been to a fight weekend, you guys know this. We go through the hero's journey, and you guys know that there's this threshold of invitation for every man. Every time you go through something that sucks in your life, it is not the end of your story. It's an invitation into the next chapter. But to go into the next chapter, you have to risk. There's a jumping off point. And we've said this before, that most men spend most of their lives between living in their normal life, their ordinary, and the threshold. So they just swivel between the ordinary life and the threshold, ordinary life to threshold, because they're living their ordinary life. They get an invitation, they get to the edge of the cliff, and they go, nah, dude, that's too much. Nah, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. Like, dude, you could just put money away and save, and then you would have money. Nah, dude, I'm just gonna spend whatever I want. I mean, I was just on the phone with a friend like this week, and at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, dude, alcohol is destroying your life. You're actually an alcoholic. Because it's alcohol, it's pills, it's all these things in your life. Like, there's just too much in your life. There's too many things happening, dog. No, I'm good. I'm like, no, dude, it's just like, you don't need to spend money and go to this huge thing. Just go to AA, like, start there. Nah, I'm good. You are right there. Your life is fracturing. It's not the end, it's an invitation, but it requires risk because you have to admit you're not perfect. That's the other part of this that I'm trying to invite us into before we get into the poem, which is, at the end of the day, to say that I'm not perfect is a risk that most men aren't willing to take, because they have to admit their own failures in order to say, I'm not perfect. I'm willing to admit I was wrong. And here's the crazy part. I'll say this before we jump into the poem, is that I think this is what's most helpful for men sometimes. And I don't quite have words for this yet. It's something I'm processing. I was writing a little bit about it this week. Is, at the end of the day, most men, to learn the most out of a situation, you have to admit you're wrong, even when you're not wrong, because even in that journey, you'll find things out about yourself that you didn't know prior. And most men are so busy trying to figure out how to prove themselves right, they miss the invitation to humble themselves before someone they love in order to find something they've never seen before. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's literally like a fresh thought, like this week. The concept is that just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. Because to try to prove you're right, with this phrase you've heard me say before, if you're trying to be right, you're already wrong. Like, that's the brutality of it. If your goal is to be right, you are already wrong, because the invitation is not to be right. The invitation is connection. And through that connection, you may You may find that some of those places you were right, but most of the time you're going to get introduced to parts of yourself that you didn't even know yet that still needed to be transformed, that still needed care, that still needed love, that still needed healing and wholeness. So with that in mind, let's jump into the poem for tonight. I want to jump into this one. For those of you guys that haven't done it with us before, what we do is each night we jump into a poem or a story, something like that. And what we do is we use it as a kind of a jumping off point. So do not stress out about that. Let me put myself as the spotlight here. Boop. There we go. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to read it. I'm going to read it through slowly the first time, and then I'm going to read it just all the way through quickly the second time. And then after we're done, I'm going to ask you to feed the poem. The way we do this is, the reason we do this, to feed the poem or feed the story, is a way of saying which part impacted me. And what's amazing about doing this, the reason we do this is the same reason we even sing worship songs in church, which some of you guys know. The reason we sing them is because the reason we sing them or we tell stories or we watch movies is because when we're moved by those things, it's because it's giving us language or image to something we were feeling or experiencing, but did not have language or image for it ourselves. So it gives a picture, it gives language to something we never experienced. So this is called To Risk. It is by William Arthur Ward. And I'm going to start it. We'll read it slow the first time. To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk to failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, and has nothing is nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Yes, he may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Chained by his servitude, he is a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Chained by his servitude, he is a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Only a person who risks is free. I'm going to read it one more time from the top. As I'm doing so, find a word or a phrase or a little stanza that stands out to you to share with the group. Again, we're not looking for you to preach or to share why. We just want a little insight on what's sticking out to you. To Risk by William Arthur Ward. To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Chained by his servitude, he is a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Only a person who risks is free. So use the hand raising button so I can see who's doing it. And just a couple people raise their hands, and let's just see what part stood out to you. What part stood out to you? Word, phrase. Go ahead, Scotty. there's no version of this we get out of this without risking. Like we have to wake up to the fact that everything we do in life is a risk, but we get to choose how small or how big that risk, in comparison to that which we are willing to risk is the degree to which we will grow. Like you risk small, you grow small. You risk big, you grow big. You risk small, you love small. You risk big, you love big. And here's the shit part, really. At the end of the day, just because we risked big doesn't mean it will actually work out the way we hoped. That's the bummer part. See, that's the real bummer part. Because at the end of the day, let's just take it even a step further. You could do it all perfectly and correctly and still get shit on. But in that, you get to decide who you are. And in that, it will reveal who you are greater than if you got everything you wanted instead. Because anybody can act right when they risk big and get what they thought they were supposed to get. Oh, I risked big, my expectations were met, so therefore I acted and responded appropriately. Yes and amen. And then we go and sing the worship song, and God is good all the time, God is good. And that's what we do. But the problem is that it doesn't work out the way that we want all the time, even if we take the best calculated risks. And I love that. Scotty, you just put it in the chat. It's the idea that listen, I've said this a million times before. If you want what you deserve, go to hell. If you want what you deserve, go to hell. That's what we deserve. If you want what you deserve, let's just have all our relationships fracture and fall apart. Because we've kind of been a douchebag. We've actually kind of sucked in a lot of ways for a lot of the relationships and the connections we've been in, especially with this one. And at the end of the day, we didn't do it well, and we don't get what we deserve. We get what he offers us. We get what God offers us. And that is the beauty of the whole thing, because at the end of the day, we're not getting what we deserve, and therefore we should offer that same thing to everyone we meet. That's supposed to be the story, guys. The narrative is we do it right because it's right, not because of what we get on the other side. We risk big because a life of courage helps us become the men we were supposed to become. We have the hard conversations, we do the hard things because it forms us into who we were made to be, not because we're going to get what we think we deserve on the other side. And that's a frustrating reality. And some of you are like, well, that's not fair. And if you know my theory on fair, you can kind of take it and shove it. Because the truth is, the most unfair act in all of humanity is Christ nailed to a cross. And he doesn't scream out on the cross, this isn't fair. He says, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who they are. So of course they're responding this way. And I can take it, Christ is basically saying, I can take it because I know who I am, which is why when we know who we are, which identity is priority, belief systems are priority, before values, before behaviors, before purpose, before legacy, it's identity. It's belief systems. Because when we know who we are and we take a hit, it's okay because I can take the hit because I know who I am and the hit doesn't change me. When the hit changes you, when your wife talks to you in a way that makes you feel less than, it's because you don't know who you are. And I'm speaking to myself, guys. Don't hear me saying that as like, I'm coming from the mountain. Let me come down from the mountain, face shining. I've got this shit together. No, there are things that my wife says and it hurts. And I'm moved and I'm frustrated and I'm angry and I'm sad. And all it's supposed to be is an invitation to go, hey, that's a part of you that still doesn't know who you are. Can you see the difference? Does that make sense? See, there's a massive difference here, guys, because when my identity is rock solid, I don't need anyone's approval to be it. Now, if I still have to prove it, then I don't really believe it yet. That's why its identity comes out of our belief system, which determines our values, which determines our behaviors. And we're all trying over here to fix our behaviors. You guys, nobody here, no book can change your behavior. Promise you. 100,000, any book you pick up that says it can change your behavior is a lie, and it is a full-on Ponzi scheme, multi-marketing scheme. It's a scheme. It's a lie. No book can change your behavior. No podcast can change your behavior. You have to change your belief system. And so how do we do that? We're not even in the risk stuff yet, so I apologize. I am rambling a lot tonight. But we're not even into the risk stuff yet, because here's the point. The first risk, if you really want to change your identity, is you have to find a tribe. Sorry. You're like, no, I'm good on my own. Bullshit. Nobody's good on their own. Nope. No one. You need a tribe. And again, I've said this a million times. Don't have it be the fight. I don't care if it's the fight, but you do have to find a tribe that's yours. And I get that ours is a little edgier than some. So it's a little more risk taking than some. Like if you sign up for the fight, you are a risk taker in some degree. You've already taken the risk, because it'd be way safer to go to a Bible study or something that's just going to really rub your shoulders and you're going to do nice accountability. It'd be great. But so you're already in risk because you know that this is going to be a fight. We're going to go to war together. Okay. Because I'm not trying to be right and you're not trying to be right, but we're going to push each other around a little bit, because that's what we need. And see, when we get that kind of care and containment, we can finally find ourselves, and our beliefs are challenged only through community, only through tribe. If you're on your own, you will make up your own world and spin out in your own world for years. The moment you have a tribe and someone goes, hey, dude, and you guys have seen me do this at fight weekends. You've seen me do it here at Man Talk Mondays. It's a little bit like, hey, man, I'm going to call bullshit on that. That's not true. You said that, but 5 minutes earlier, you said this. Those two things don't go together. So what are you really trying to say? And what do you really believe? See, we need that. We don't need the theological jargon. What we need is a man who's going to look us in the eyes and say, who are you? And are you willing to risk the challenge of that to become who you were meant to be? And so let's jump into the risk portion. Because the risk portion, if we're going to do identity, we're going to do tribe, we're going to do these things, then you have to answer the question. Here's the first question you have to answer. What am I afraid of? Now, I started on the other side with a different question. I said, what if it got fixed would make your life, quote unquote, better, or has the appearance of better? It would feel better. Okay, great. That's one side. And we know at the end of the day, let's take money. We all, money doesn't fix problems, it causes more. Okay, so anybody who has money, I know lots of guys who do, it causes a lot more problems, okay? So your life doesn't automatically become easier. You just trade a set of problems for another set of problems. Okay, great. You have good communication with your wife. Badass. That's freaking awesome. I love that. That's awesome. Now you have to deal with all the things she's never brought up and told another human being in her entire life. And so you've got to start at square one now, and you've got years of work ahead of you. Oh, Sean, you want to start grieving? That's awesome. You should. That's great. You want to be more in touch with that grief. That's actually beautiful. But if you get in touch with that grief has a ton of layers. And we've had this conversation because we're close. You're going to have to go back years, not months or weeks or days. So now that's a long journey. Now you're in touch with it. Well, now you have to go back and be in touch with it for the 8-year-old and the 7-year-old and the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old. You got to go get in touch with all of it. You don't just get to be in touch with part of it. I want I want my wife and I to be on a better sex rhythm. I want to sweat. That's awesome. Here's what I've seen with most men. Most men, they get on a rhythm with their wife and all of a sudden they have more predictable sex. They have a better sexual conversation. And all of a sudden, guess what? Most men, and I will just tell you this from experience, for most men, I'm not saying all men, it becomes way less interesting because they don't have to fight for it as much. Now they're bored. So now they get addicted to porn. I'm like, that is the weirdest shit I've ever seen. Because how in the heck did that happen? You told me you wanted a better conversation with your wife in this area. You're having it, and now you ended up somewhere else. Yes, because part of the fight for it was what made it so interesting. Your wife, just, that in this group, just FYI, your marriage should be a constant game of cat and mouse. She should always keep you guessing sexually. Now, I'm not saying withholding. Now, so you hear me? Now, again, there's an unhealth if there's a withholding because of behaviors, and then it becomes manipulative. That's not what so do you all understand that's not what I'm talking about, okay? But what I'm talking about is the cat and mouse game of like, I got to figure this out. I have to work for it. There's a healthy tension in there that's supposed to exist inside of marriages in order to keep the connection healthy. But the question that we're getting to now is the next piece of this, which is, what are you afraid of? And then the second part of that question, and how is it dictating your behavior? Because most of the things that are showing up in our life, it's not because we're mad, it's not because we're sad. It's most of the time for men, they're scared of an outcome they've made up in their heads about what's gonna happen if the thing we mentioned earlier doesn't get fixed and their life doesn't become better. They're afraid of the outcomes that come afterwards. So we're playing it safe, we're playing it codependent, we're playing it quiet so we don't mess it up more. So I'm not going to push you into the conversations I really want to have in my marriage, but I am going to say that I wish I had better conversations. Now, I'm not going to grieve all the deepest stuff in my life because I don't really want to go touch those things. That's a little hard, but I do wish I grieved more. Do you see what I'm saying? It's because there's a part of us that's afraid of what that could look like and what the other side would be. And we have to answer the questions, what am I afraid of? And how is it dictating my story right now? How's it dictating my behavior? Because I'm playing it safe so that I don't have to actually risk in the places that are most difficult. Because if I did, I believe this would happen. What are the lies? We have to uncover those lies. The second part is this. This is a Joseph Campbell quote. I'll give you this one. It says, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. That's one of my favorite Joseph Campbell quotes. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So that place of fear of that conversation, the fear of having that connection, the fear of stepping out in this way is actually the place of our greatest breakthrough. That's over on the other side of that. So if we're going to do this well, we need to have mission and purpose, not ego. So now here's what happens when you know who you are and you have a tribe. No longer are you living belief, value, behaviors to get on the other side to prove yourself. Because that's just ego, right? That's not purpose. If I need to show you who I am through my talents, my gifts, my abilities, my stuff, what I do, what I have, if I'm still doing that, that's all ego. That's just me proving how great I am for the sake of you telling me how great I am, which then fuels my ego and causes a cycle. Purpose, and you guys know this in the fight, we call it your divine purpose. We're not just after your purpose, we're after your divine purpose. And here's why. Your divine purpose is always in service to someone else. If you have a divine purpose, if you found a purpose for your life, you think you found it, and it's not an act of service to others, then it's not your purpose. You haven't found it yet. You found another ego pursuit. Because your true purpose, as a man, your true purpose will always be found in an act of service to someone else. And this is why this is so important. Because it says, because here's like, let me go the opposite direction for a second. I'll say it this way, which is at the end of the day, playing it safe and not choosing to risk and living in your ego and entitlement is not just poor behavior, it's actually complete disobedience to God. Like, it is that harsh. It's rebellion against God. And Matthew, I love what he says. He says, if you try to save your life, what? What does it say on the other side? If you try to save your life, what? You lose it. That's it. Like, if anyone tries to save their life, guess what happens? And most of us have experienced this, right? We've experienced like, I tried to make it okay. I just wanted to make it better. I just wanted to make it all right. I tried to live for me. I tried to live for this thing. And then I lived codependently. And in that place of codependence, ego, prove how great I am, show everyone that I'm really strong and powerful and awesome. The whole thing falls apart. Everything goes to shit. The marriage falls apart, the kids fall apart, the house falls apart, the church thing falls apart, relationship with God, the job falls apart. It all falls apart. Friendships fall apart. Everything falls apart. Why? Because living for myself is not just an act of ego. You have to take it all the way. An act of ego is full on rebellion against God. That's all. That's exactly what it is. I'm doing this to show other people what I'm capable of. See, that's where the hard conversations start coming in. That's where the hard connections start coming in. That's where the vulnerability comes in. That's where all of this stuff starts to work in. Because those are the risks. See, we're like, yeah, dude, I've taken tons of risks in business, and I took risks with God, and I went on the mission trip, and I did the thing. And you guys have heard me say this a million times. That's great. Those are not the hardest risks. If those are risks that you could jump into, they weren't the risks that were necessary for you. That's why I love the verse that says, where Christ calls us to pick up your cross and follow me. Did you see the key word in there? He doesn't say pick up his cross. He says pick up yours. Yours doesn't look like his. And how often do you have to pick it up? Daily. So his cross, in his time and in his way, changed all of humanity and did what? Told his bride how much she was loved and how valued she was. For us, it's the exact same thing. Pick up our cross. What is it? What are you avoiding? What is the thing in your life that you're not willing to risk? The conversations you're not willing to have, the things that you're putting off, but you know that in that cave is the treasure you're seeking.